For centuries, the map of India was just constantly and often violently changing. Today, we're going to dive into how waves of invasion and the clash of dynasties didn't just move borders around, they completely forged a new political reality on the subcontinent. What you're looking at here is the Qutub Minar complex in Delhi, but it's so much more than just a monument. It's really ground zero for a whole new empire that was born from chaos. This tower is a declaration, written in stone, that everything was about to change. So what exactly happened to so radically redraw the map of India?
Okay, so where does all this start? Well, it all begins with a catalyst. Around the turn of the 11th century, a storm was gathering beyond India's borders that would change the course of its history forever.
Now look, warfare between Indian kingdoms was nothing new. That happened all the time. But this was something else entirely. We're talking about unprecedented waves of invaders sweeping through the Hindu Kush Mountains, coming from the vast expanse of Central Asia. So who were these invaders? Well, they were primarily Central Asian warriors, people we often describe as Turkic or Afghan. And just so we're clear, Turkic isn't one single group. It's this huge umbrella term for a whole collection of peoples and cultures stretching across that entire region. So what drove them all towards India? Well, it was this really powerful cocktail of motivations. For one, you had the almost legendary wealth of the subcontinent. That was a massive draw. But it was also about pure territorial ambition, the simple desire to conquer. And for many, there was a mission to spread their own religion, and that was often done by the sword. So out of this chaotic storm of invasions, something a bit more permanent starts to take shape. A new center of power emerges that's going to dominate northern India for centuries, the Delhi Sultanate. Remember this year, 1206. This is the moment the Delhi Sultanate is officially born. And just like that, the entire political center of gravity in northern India shifts, and everything starts to revolve around the city of Delhi. And what exactly is a sultanate? Well, it's pretty simple actually. It's just a kingdom or a territory that's ruled by a sultan, which was a title used by a number of Muslim rulers during this time. But here's the thing. Don't picture one long, stable, royal family. The Sultanate was anything but stable. It was actually a chaotic succession of 5 different Turkic Afghan dynasties, one basically toppling the next. You had the Mamluks, then the Khojis, the Tughlaqs, the Sayyids, and finally the Lodis. And that constant, violent turnover, well, that's really at the heart of this whole story. And this right here perfectly captures their mindset. The Qutub Minar isn't just some tower, it's a colossal statement of victory and ambition. Its sheer size was designed to shout to the entire world that a new, incredibly ambitious power had arrived and was here to stay.
And if you look closely at the complex, there's a really key detail about how it was built. An inscription right there at the main mosque notes that materials from 27 pre-existing Hindu and Jain temples were used in its construction. It's a powerful illustration of this dramatic clash and overlap of cultures and power.
But for all its grand monuments, the Delhi Sultanate was really built on a foundation of sand. It was defined by one thing above all else, just a relentless, brutal, and violent instability right at the very top.
To really get a sense of how brutal this era was, just consider this quote: "Almost 2 sultans out of 3 seized power by eliminating their predecessor." Let that sink in. This wasn't politics as we know it. It was a deadly Game of Thrones where a peaceful succession was the exception, not the rule. And all of that constant violence, it had a very clear result. The average reign for a sultan was barely more than 9 years. 9 years. Just think about that. That's an incredibly short time to be in charge, and it really highlights just how precarious life at the top truly was. But here's something that's absolutely crucial to remember. Delhi's power was not absolute. Far from it. Beyond the capital, the rest of the subcontinent was this complex chessboard of fierce resistance and really powerful rivals. Okay, so take a look at this map. It really shows you the dramatic ebb and flow of power. See the huge territory the Tughlaq dynasty held at its peak? Now, compare that to the much, much smaller area the Lodis controlled just over a century later. It's clear the Sultanate's grip was constantly weakening and its borders were always shifting. So why were those borders shrinking? Well, because powerful rivals were pushing back, hard. Out in the east, you had kingdoms like the Eastern Ganges holding strong. Down south, the Hoysalas, and then soon enough, two major new empires rose up to challenge Delhi directly, the mighty Vijayanagara Empire and the Bahmani Sultanate. So yeah, India was anything but a single unified territory.
All right, let's pull all these different threads together. After centuries of invasion, dynastic chaos, and all these regional wars, what was the final result? How had the map of India truly been reshaped by all this?
This timeline really helps lay it all out, right? It all kicks off in 1206, with the Sultanate being founded. But just over 100 years later, its great southern rival, Vijayanagara, is born. And then, boom, in 1398, a devastating attack on Delhi by the warlord Timur shows just how vulnerable the Sultanate really is. Finally, the whole era comes to a bloody end in 1526 at the First Battle of Panipat.
So, the legacy of all this? It was absolutely profound. New centers of power had been created. Old kingdoms were gone, new ones had risen in their place. The subcontinent's political, cultural, and religious landscape was just permanently and fundamentally changed forever. So here's the final takeaway. This long, brutal period of conflict had effectively shattered the old order. It basically cleared the board, creating a volatile but really dynamic new landscape. The stage was now set for an even larger, more centralized empire to rise from the ashes. The only question was, who was going to be the one to finally unite this completely reshaped map?